Hello, welcome to an update on my final major project, Condemned Souls of the Veil. It's been a long time since I've done my last update, dating back to October, I believe, as unfortunately since then I had the project proposal for the education side of the actual game to be submitted, and a lot of things externally got in the way of my studies, so which prevented me from having a lot of motivation and confidence to actually continue the project. But now where I'm currently at in March today, I'm in a better place than I was, and I'm hoping to basically kickstart a implementation side of the game to get all the practical elements in now and actually start making this towards the new milestones that I will be going into in this video. I thought I'd start off with a project pitch document just to sort of break down how the idea came about instead of all the last recap videos I did, because it was all a bit haywire in the air in terms of the idea and why I wanted to go with the project. So I thought it'd be nice to sort of do like a recap and break down a bit further as to how the idea originated from and how it will be developed for the next few weeks as we go on. So obviously we've got Condemned Souls of the Veil. It started off the game overview being in regards to my idea about entering a two-way connection world with regards to saving a life from a demon that has condemned someone's soul, and it originated with the idea about the player waking up and realizing that someone's soul is in danger and they need to try and save it before it's condemned. And obviously this gave a lot of idea in terms of how to reach and beyond what we call the veil in this scenario for my protagonist character. So the player is known as Rebecca, and I'll go over some story elements in a minute, but essentially she wakes up in the apartment and has had visions in the dreams, and goes to a computer which has all the information about her dreams, which is strange because why would someone know about what you would dream about since it's a dream essentially. So it's all about the veil in itself, the demon realm where soul is being condemned, and I thought I'd add this with a bit more context in terms of real world problems as well. So this is going on the side of depression. Depression is a severely neglected and conjectured health disorder that should be better acknowledged by illustrating emotion, and this type of method will be demonstrated through the creation of this game, Condemned Souls of the Veil. I picked depression as the topic because it is, in regards to my research question as well, how can a specific thing like depression be comprehended better in an interactive, psychologically themed fiction game. So this is basically the basis of my project, and I'm trying to explain depression, how much of a seriousness it is, and to raise awareness in that respect to those that will play this game, essentially. So it's not really a game, it's like a teaching fiction piece, really. But obviously we had the choice to make an app or a tool, and I wanted to make a game that actually understood real world problems and experiences of what someone might be going through, essentially, and that's where the background comes in. I may go through my project proposal, I might just link it in the description below just to give a bit more of a breakdown, but this is more the practical side of the game, essentially. So ideally the game is set obviously as a character being a student. They're going through their final years of university, and everything's sort of getting to them, and basically the players having a reflection back on their life story in terms of where they got to where they are now. So all the events in their life has taken to what they hope to achieve and what they've gone through in terms of like independence and study, real world like career ethics as well. So instead of being always in education, and taking that across to the real world of work as well. And this is ideally in a photography set because my character is a photographer, or studying to be a photographer, and the target demographic is essentially 18 to 25. It's gender neutral because obviously depression, based on research that I discovered, it's between two sides. It's debating whether with someone who has depression or someone who lives with depression. So it's two different things. This can be covered more in my project proposal, but I won't go into the details of that unless obviously you want to look in the description. So that's basically like the overview. It's basically a game based on depression. The story is to uncover the character's own depression, whether or not they would accept or deny that they have depression in the end, just to raise that fear awareness through those stages and what causes it as well. So inspirations came from a collection of previous titles, so essentially it's films and games. My first one about the two-world connection was based on Insidious, the horror movie, the franchise, and they involve it with like a two-world connection between life and death. They have a spiritual world called the Further. I like to change that in terms of the Veil, so I'm basing that, and it was mainly also with Oblivion, the Elder Scrolls game, sort of like having that ability to go into the realm and basically face evil. So that sort of creates a two-world connection. And then I thought about the um, connection between a player and the recipient of on this digital novel game. Emily is Away. It's a very popular indie game. Really, it's not based on depression. It's more about the feelings of losing someone, and I wanted to enhance that a bit more in terms of loss and saving a life, because that can affect a lot of people in terms of whether you've dealt with depression through loss or whether someone else has died. You know, essentially, that sort of tried to create the realism of it as well. And I also wanted to follow the sort of art style as well. That's why I'm choosing a minimalistic by design art style as well. So we're going by using pixelated visuals, a bit like the retro PlayStation graphics. So we're talking 32-bit visuals, and that will bring a bit more like the Emily's Away graphics as well to match with the computer UI that I'll have set up, because my computer in the game will be like a help tool to the player, sort of indicating, you know, what to do next, essentially. Because if anything, it's all about the environmental storytelling that I'll go into as well. So then you've got Depression Quest, which is a game based on depression, and it's sort of based on true stories of depression itself as well. So that sort of created the understanding of depression comprehension, which led me to thinking this is my main topic that I want my product to express and raise awareness to. And then it's obviously fell on with Life is Strange, the 2015 decision-making RPG game based by Square Enix, where Max Caulfield, funny enough, is a photographer at a high school, and it made me realise about not the case of changing time, as that timeline has that, but really with the changing of the environment and the environmental storytelling. It's all about the things that you find along the way to eventually change the fate of somebody or something. So essentially the butterfly effect. I did do research about this with the butterfly effect, and it led me to things about depression, anxiety, and all these other mental health issues and disorders. Which obviously comes with the environmental storytelling. So essentially, what I'm trying to depict here with Life is Strange is that the Polaroid, as well as the one shown on Depression Quest, you'll be able to search the flat through environmental storytelling and interact with items that relate to the player's background. Because the player, you know, is just that they're called Rebecca and they are a photography student. You don't know anything about them until you actually start interacting with the environment to uncover what she's been through and her chain of events that have led her to become depressed. What she's relying on most when she hasn't actually got anything or anyone. And the idea in using Polaroids is that I will create a Polaroid camera using the inspection system to take a screen capture in game to represent what the items are of significance to them. And then you will create basically like a collage of Polaroids which will act as a detective wall to piece together the missing puzzles in what you're trying to uncover for the character's background. And essentially once you've got enough of the items, or I said like all the items interacted around the flat, then that will build that profile of the character, which we'll come into as well. Another event that takes place that I'll show in the actual game itself. I will demonstrate a bit of the game in this presentation as well, just to break it down. Followed by the gameplay as well. So that's basically the inspirations. So the gameplay itself will include level design, minimalistic art style based on low poly objects. Essentially my current milestone that I'll go into shortly is made up of squares in the game engine Unity, which is my choice of game engine. And then we've got the object interaction via the examine system. So this was like the first basis of my Polaroid mechanics that I plan to develop upon. So I just want to make sure it works, so you can click on an item, rotate it, and ensure that you have interaction with it. So what else you can do, pick it up, put it back, or add it to essentially your screenshots. And then obviously the visuals would be the pixelated camera rendering, so that's going to be using a retro graphics shader, because I found helpful from peers that the testing with a shader was a lot more sufficient in terms of using a canvas renderer as your camera, because it's poor performance issues when you build the game, and actually I did find out it lags. Bear in mind this video will be with the camera renderer with a pixelated canvas instead on a raw image. It's not the best quality, but it's just to get the idea in terms of the immersion and the player experience and how the map will look. So I'm just going to demonstrate the game itself. So here we have the pixelated bedroom. In terms of like furniture and everything. So I've done a basic flat made out of shapes. It's all made out of cubes and cylinders just to get an idea on how the game is going to look. I intend to use the level design for the walls and that in Unity because that enables me to not worry about the um, attention to detail mechanics as well, and I can also do the level design in the content design in Blender, sorry, so that I can put together the objects necessary to have interactables, and also less detail being low poly, it makes it easier, plus the visuals with the processing I'll be using will make it a bit more immersive and they will connect. Here you're just about to see the interaction of objects, so examining a system, you can look at it, pick it up and place it back to where it was, so that's going to be where the Polaroid will take place. Just to like screen capture, and then it will add to the wall. Essentially this is still a work in progress, but it's just to demonstrate the idea, to get your head around it. I've done the same with a kitchen knife as well, so you can pick up the item, look at it, put it back, just to give a bit more realism. Literally all the shapes are, all the furniture is made up of shapes, which took quite a while to do, but I was quite happy with how it turned out, just to get a physical idea on what the game's going to look like. So that was like the basis of the game itself, and that's the end of the pitch. In regards to the game itself, obviously we're looking at two milestones that I'll go into. I'll quickly go back on these. So my remainder back in February, I looked at 12 weeks to the deadline, which is our submission date, and I was going to create 3 milestones within those every 4 weeks, so 1 month per milestone. I'm currently in the second milestone because I've reached the first milestone, which was last week. So I'm in the second week of my second milestone. That makes sense, and it's meant to be aiming to create prototype iteration 2, which would include all the fully working mechanics and everything. I would have obviously loved to be in prototype iteration 1 with all the fully working mechanics, but I'm not, because there was a lot of drawbacks and cut downs on scope and what realistically I could do in the time I have to still create a vertical slice. So essentially I'm going to be doing all the main mechanics by the end of this milestone to make core functionality, which consists of the Polaroid camera mechanics, the computer help UI, which will look in graphically in pixel, so it looks like an old retro computer to match the style of the level design, because I don't want the player to be immersed in this environment and then taken away by a UI which doesn't feel as immersed, and so it keeps that progressive game flow going. And also obviously the win and lose state, which is what I was going about in terms of the depression, so acceptance and denial. I'll go back on just this section here, where in the bedroom you can see that there is a mirror. So this mirror, each time that when you interact with objects, take photos and discover what they mean, say it was I don't know, a photo or a letter or something related to the character from the past and everything, and each time this is discovered by the player, the mirror will act with either particle effect or animation to represent the other world, the demon realm, known as the Veil. So that's like the entrance to the Veil. It's not fully open yet, because obviously you're going to see like a two-way scene in terms of that. So the player will see themselves in a different world. So it's like a small pocket universe known as the Veil with an archway. And eventually, when all these objects have been discovered and the puzzle's sort of complete, creating the background story of the character, then the mirror is going to shatter and they'll basically transport you over to the Veil, where the player will then meet the demon about to condemn the player's soul to, within acceptance or denial of depression. And this will be interacted through a dialogue system that will enable the player to answer questions related to all the research they've basically done to build up the profile of the character to get the win or lose state. And it's not essentially win or lose, it's just about, admittance or denial to what the player has with depression. So the way it will go is like a loop. It is a replayable core loop. I don't expect the player to just get one ending and then that's it. So I'm going to give the player the option to, if they get the acceptance of depression, then that means they will wake up back in the flat, and then they will leave the flat, go to look for help, because that's essentially the end of the day, you've accepted you've got depression, and the next thing is to get support and look for help. Whereas denial of depression will put the player back into the flat, and they will not have to go through the process of all the objects again, because that would be environmentally killing the vertical slice, and that does not put players in a happy position. They will just basically go back to the demon realm and answer the same questions again, to get to the right answer, and it's like a winning and ending. So it's just by text really, which we'll look forward to implementing. So that's essentially how the game would come about really. I'll briefly just demonstrate the game itself. It's literally just low poly setup at the moment. So current milestone is just low cubed environment with camera, movement, and examine system. Essentially, I'm going to be working, like I said, on the computer, which I'll just demonstrate here. So the computer will pop up with a UI over here in the player's eyes, and then obviously the examine system will have like a Polaroid canvas to demonstrate that you're using the camera, just to get the foundations in place. And then I'm thinking about putting the detective walls somewhere relevant to the player around, and then obviously I will create a small pocket room, probably the size of the bathroom, to be honest, of the Demon Realm, to represent that this is where the player's final setting is, to see the outcome through the decision making that the player will have the option to based on the research they found. So that's essentially where the milestone is, and depending how far it takes for the implementation mechanics, then I will start developing in Blender just some content to actually give some interactables and stuff for the player to actually, relate to story elements, because the whole point of environmental storytelling is to have the pure player interaction. Also, there's a character player connection too, in terms of like they're going through maybe something they might have had or know someone they might have felt, with the realizing of depression. So it's just to raise that awareness essentially. But that's basically what my current status of the project is after all these months. I'm feeling confident that I can meet these goals in the next couple of weeks, just to ensure that I get the mechanics working and have a bit more liveliness in the game, because it's not really playable and it surely needs to be testable. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks, and we'll just see how that goes really. So obviously stay tuned up to date, and just check out my blog and everything, and obviously recap videos if you really need to go through that. They're sort of just how the idea came about essentially, but the idea actually developed probably further into like where the proposal was due, and obviously about depression being a massive thing. And I'll basically see you in the next video. So thank you very much, and stay tuned, and we'll see you soon.